You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Hey, welcome, folks. Here we are. Hope everyone had a great weekend. You are tuned in to America's Web Radio. This is On Point with Victor. I am Victor Armendariz. And man, I tell you what, I say it all the time, folks. It almost doesn't make sense to do show prep because by the time I get in here, so much more has happened, and then there's so many things going through my brain that I just want to talk about. And we're loaded for bear today, so today is no different. And like I said, I hope all you guys had a good weekend. You know, you got to enjoy life. Look, folks, there is optimism to be had. I know that when you take a look at what Biden and the Democrats are doing right now to this country, and look, folks, this really shouldn't be about D's and R's and being married to a political party. Anyone with half a brain should be able to look and go, okay, this is not the direction that the United States of America should be going. This isn't the direction that a country should be taking that's going to provide for all its people and all its citizens. And yes, we should take care of our citizens. The citizen should come first, folks. And right now, with open borders, the non-citizen is coming before the citizen. With gas prices going up, inflation is out of control, folks. And look, if you're just can't get off CNN or MSNBC or ABC or NBC or CBS or PBS or NPR, if that's the only places you're going, or late night TV, what used to be comedy TV, but now it's just late night trash. If you're stuck on those type of shows, that's where you're getting your news. You're being told there's no inflation, but you can see it right before your eyes. I don't know how you guys can support a political party right now that is constantly telling you, no, don't believe what you're seeing. Don't believe what you're living. No, your eyes are lying to you. You need to just listen to us, a political hack party run by career politicians, and you're letting them convince you that what you see is not real. And you really need to ask yourself, folks, why are you doing that? I mean, is a political party that important to you? If you're driving every day, you're paying more for gas. Do you know if you're buying food every day, you're paying more for food? You know who doesn't see that? Your career elitist politicians in Washington. These people don't go to the market every day. They're elitist. They have somebody do it for them. They couldn't tell you what the price of milk is or bread today. Or meat, a package of meat. You go get some beef today. Go get a steak to grill out. Go try and find some chicken wings. In the real world, folks, where you and I live, where we the peasants live, we see the higher gas prices. We see gas lines. I pulled into a pump this very weekend, and there were still gas shortages. I had to put crap gas in my motorcycle, and that really, really ticks me off. Folks, if you know anything about gasoline and small engines, ethanol and small engines do not go well together, and I do not like putting ethanol fuel in my motorcycle. And if I'm going to have to put ethanol fuel in the motorcycle, then it has to be 93. It's got to be the highest octane I can get. Well, just the other day, this past weekend, I'm on the bike, and I had to put crap gas because they were out of everything else. And that wasn't one, that was more than one station. So again, we the people out here in the real world, we the peasant, we the non-elitist, we the people who are living day to day our lives outside the Washington bubble, we are paying for the higher prices. We are seeing gas shortages. We're seeing inflation in everything that we buy. Meat prices are through the roof. Milk's costing more. Your bread's costing. Everything is costing more. And it's because we are getting into the late 70s era of inflation. And this is all caused by politicians. Every bit of pain you are feeling today in this economy, whether it be the gas lines or the gas prices or the food prices or labor shortages. Folks, if you've got a small business, you can't find enough people to hire. All of these things are because of politicians and their ridiculous policies, mostly the Democrats. Now, is there some blame to bear for the establishment GOP? Oh, yes, there is. Did some of these hack GOP establishment morons go along with the Democrats? Oh, yes. And folks, it ain't over yet. Chuck U. Schumer from New York, this clown has got a, 4,000 plus page bill that he's calling the Frontiers Act. He's got this bill circulating through the Senate. And there are some goofball establishment Republicans who are already saying they're going to sign on or jump on board and sign this bill that does nothing for you and me. It does nothing for the American people. It does nothing for you, the peasant. All it does, it puts billions and billions of dollars in the hands of, again, the non-citizen. So, folks, at some point, I know I say it all the time, but you've got to wake up. Look, I know when you listen to me, you're some of you, especially new listeners, because I hear from you. Oh, Victor, you're a Republican. You're a Republican. You're this. You're that. No, I'm an American. I'm an American before all else. And to be an American in this country, you should look out and say, is this politician actually doing policy that's going to help foster Americanism? Is it going to foster policies that will foster me to be able to help my neighbor? Can I help my family? Can I help my friends? It's as simple as that, folks. It's so much more than a D and an R. So when you hear me rail against Democrats, yes, I rail against Democrats because today's Democrat is not yesterday's Democrats. Today's Democrat Party is not the party of Kennedy. It's not even the party of Bill Clinton. You know, Bill Clinton at least had the gonads to go out there and say, hey, we need to slow down the era of big government. And Bill Clinton had now granted, he was doing it for himself, but at least he had the political know-how that I got to work with the Republicans and we've got to come up to somewhere in the middle and stop the expansion of government and let's go towards freedom and liberty. Let's at least meet in the middle. And Bill Clinton did that. Today's Democrat Party is not that. It's not that. Today's Democrat Party is full-on Marxist, socialist, China-loving, communist-loving party. And if you think there's some moderates, if you think Joe Biden is a moderate, then, well, you really are whistling by the graveyard. And if you need proof, look at, it was either last week or the week before, 100% of the Democrats, 100% of the Democrats voted no on a bill to recognize and admonish Hamas as the terrorist organization that they are. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past couple of weeks, Hamas, a terrorist organization in the Middle East, has been lobbing over 4,000 missiles into a country, a sovereign country, a country that didn't spark any kind of war, a country that didn't go after these people, Hamas or the all these things you're hearing about the Gaza. But yet Hamas, a terrorist organization, over 4,000 missiles they've launched at innocents, folks. They're not just seeking military installations. They were bombing innocent people. And they were doing this as recklessly. They even killed some of their own people because they don't know how to fire a freaking missile half the time. Or the missiles are Iranian or Chinese missiles, and they fail quite often. But folks, this is what's happening. And we all know, even the global community recognizes that Hamas is a terrorist organization. And yet, last week, or it was the week before, 100% of your elected Democrats would not vote yes to condemn Hamas and call them what they are. That is today's Democrat Party. And that is why I rail against the Democrats. Now, those of you who've asked me, are you a Republican or staunch Republican? No, I'm an American. I believe in freedom. I believe in liberty. I believe in the United States Constitution. I believe that we are free people and we should act that way. And I believe government should be as small as the Constitution says it should be. Folks, there are 18 enumerated powers in the United States Constitution. That's it. That's as big as the federal government should be. Everything else should be on the state level. Everything. If you want a nice little democracy, then do it in your state. If you want a nice welfare system, do it in your state. Should not be coming from the federal government. Education, oh my gosh, we have such a problem now because our education system is such a joke. And it's a joke because it's coming from the federal government. It should be on the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the lowest. You want to talk about communities. Communities should be in charge of their education system, not the federal government. So I could go on and on about that, folks, but I want you to understand where I'm coming from because some of you have asked, and many of you have been asking. I look at this as we are Americans and we should stand together and we should stand for our Constitution. Folks, if you don't like the United States Constitution and you don't like freedom and you don't like liberty, if you're too afraid to be free, if you want coddling and security to be more than, or if that's worth more than your freedom, then there are plenty of countries you can move to. No one's stopping you because in this country, you have the right to leave. And maybe you should. Maybe you should. And I'm not trying to be mean. But rather change our God-given rights of freedom and liberty. You should just leave. There are plenty. We are the only country on the planet that has a document that says your rights are God-given. They're not government-given. So if you want government coddling and government to control every aspect of your life, there's plenty of countries to go to. Leave. Go try it out. If you don't like it, come back. Maybe we'll welcome you back. But you know, I got a feeling if many of you have been to some of the places I've been, you would have a much more appreciation for freedom and liberty. So folks, so when some of you hear me and you think, gosh, Victor's one way, I'm not. I'm an American. And I believe in freedom, and I believe in liberty. So when I look at policy and I look at somebody that's running for office, they have to pass the freedom and the liberty test, the Constitution test. Now, today, right now, does that mean I'm voting for more Republicans? Well, yeah, it does. Because right now, the Republican Party is the only party right now, and some libertarians and some independents that really still believe in freedom and liberty. Now, I separate some of these Republicans because when we talk about establishment Republicans, they're just as bad as the Democrats. Your Romneys, your McCaskells, your Collins, your Ben Sass, your Pat Toomeys. There's a ton of them, and they got to go. We need to throw them all out your Lindsey Grahams, your Mitch McConnells. All of these people need to be taken out in the primaries. When there's an opportunity, we need to start putting some freedom-loving Americans to run for office and take out some of these establishment Republicans. But we must vote for we must vote for some conservative, freedom-loving, libertarian-type Republicans. That's who we need, not today's Democrats. All right, folks, we are, believe it or not, at our first break. So we're going to go to the first break, and when we come back, I'm going to get into some really good topics that you're going to want to hear. All right, we'll be right back. Don't you go anywhere. This is America's Web Radio.
Hello, my name is Rick White, and I'm the director of the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. I want to encourage all Georgia veterans to consider being nominated to the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. And if you are a Georgia veteran, and the definition of a Georgia veteran is either you were born in the state of Georgia, or you've lived here 10 years, or you were raised to right and joined the military in this state, you are considered a Georgia veteran. For further information, go to www.gmbhof.org, or you can contact me at 678-427-0915. We'd love to have your nomination for the Georgia Military Veterans Hall of Fame. Thank you so much.
If you live to serve and want to make an even bigger difference, consider joining the U.S. Army. With training in fields like medical care, linguistics, and engineering, an Army career can amplify your efforts with humanitarian opportunities all over the world. Plus, you'll receive competitive pay and incredible benefits, so you'll be taken care of, too. Learn more at GoArmy.com.
Hi, this is Rocky Blair, former four-time Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers and Vietnam veteran. As a board member, I'd like to talk to you about Warriors to Citizen, a nonprofit organization that helps American heroes, soldiers, police, fire, EMT, and their families recover from the psychological harm caused by career-induced stress. Over the last 20 years, broken relationships have been a major causal factor for the highest documented divorce rate and resulting suicides in this population. This program, From Warriors to Citizen, is delivered free to families by professionals, all whom served in uniform and understand the needs to be addressed. I ask for your support, so please go to our website, warriorstocitizen.org, and find out how you can help, either by making a donation or sharing this information with an American hero that you may know. And thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Hi, folks. We are back. We're back. Okay, so you are listening to America's Web Radio. This is the On Point with Victor show. Look, folks, if you want to reach me, Victor at AmericasWebRadio.com, Victor at AmericasWebRadio.com. We've got some advertising spots, folks. If you want to advertise your business, talk about your business, email gm at americaswebradio.com, gm at americaswebradio.com. If you are out there and you want to be a patron and support the On Point with Victor show, please go to our website, americaswebradio.com. Click on Point with Victor, and you'll see a place for patron, and you can click there and become a patron. And I'm very fortunate. You guys are great. We have so many great listeners, and thank you to the current patrons. And if you can join in and help, that would be great, folks. You don't have to do a lot, but everything helps and everything adds up, because as I've said before, we can't do this for free. So all right, folks, so let's move on to some of the topics. Well, actually, before I get to that, I wanted to just mention I went to a place on Sundays, folks. Therapy for me is getting on a motocross bike and going berserk on some motocross trails and motocross tracks. And I took my KLX 300R, which, is probably a bike I shouldn't be riding, but I ride it anyway. And I went out there on Sunday, and that's my therapy, folks. And I found a place called Iron Mountain. And if you're in Georgia or Tennessee or North Carolina, drive on over to Iron Mountain. You can ride your dirt bike, you can ride your side-by-side, your 4x4. It is a playground resort for off-roading, and I can't speak highly enough about it. So check it out, folks. Iron Mountain. I believe it's ironmountain.com if you want to look it up, or just do a DuckDuckGo search, Iron Mountain Off-Road Resort. All right, folks. So what should be in the headline every day, every headline you hear should start out with the crime waves, the current crime waves, folks. If you've been living under a rock, then maybe you don't know about it. But again, this is one of the things that we as Americans, we the people on the ground, we the peasants who have to get up and work every day, or those of us who choose to work every day, when you're out and about and you're driving and just in the cities, especially if you're living in a city that's run by Democrats, then you are seeing crime waves that are just getting worse and worse ever since the Democrats took control. In fact, it started before that with these Democrat-run cities, because this whole business of defunding the police. And folks, defunding the police has been happening. It's been happening in Democrat-run cities, and everywhere that's been happening, crime is going through the roof. And if you don't believe me, you can look it up yourself, but you really shouldn't doubt me, and some of you do sometimes, and then you have to come back and go, gosh, Victor, you were right. Well, here's another one, because I was telling you about this crime spree months ago. In fact, a year ago, we were talking about what was coming if you defund the police. And how do I know that this is going on still, the defunding the police? Because CNN and MSNBC, well, let me put it this way. How do I know that more and more Americans are catching on to the crime wave, and they're actually seeing, okay, these policies are really making it unsafe. They're making our cities not safe. And one of the biggest concerns to American people today is their safety. And so how do I know that people are recognizing it? Because over the weekend or the past few days, CNN and MSNBC and the rest of the lamestream media has been bending over backwards with stories trying to convince you that there's no defunding of the police, that there's no such thing, that defunding of the police never happened. Instead, they use these pretty words like reallocation of funds. Cities are reallocating money. Folks, reallocating money is defunding the police. When you pull money from your police fund, from police training, from police weapons, from police hiring, when you pull that money and you allocate it somewhere else, you're defunding the police. I don't know why some of you just haven't caught on to how you're being lied to over and over and over, day by day by day, especially by CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, NPR. They're all lying to you. And right now, they see the American people are catching wind of this crime wave because, again, when you can see it for your eyes and you see it for yourself and you feel what's going on, you know this is happening, but yet the media is out there trying to tell you it's not happening. Just like the Democrat Party's trying to tell you that, no, there's not a labor shortage. Oh, there's not a gas lines. Oh, there's no gas shortage. Oh, there's no spike in gas prices. There's no inflation. They're telling you all these things are flat out lies. They're about as big a lie as what Fauci's been telling for the past year. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But there's crime waves going on, folks, and it's happening in Democrat-run cities where they've defunded or reallocated police money. The whole, folks, it's insane to me that we're allowing this to go on. But you know what? I think there is a huge swing of the pendulum coming in 2022, and a lot of these Democrats are going to lose their jobs, and deservingly so. They should lose their jobs. So, let me give you an example of what a crime wave looks like, folks. This past weekend, and maybe the week before, in Atlanta, Georgia, in Metro Atlanta. Atlanta's a big city here in the capital of Georgia, run by Democrats, been run by Democrats for years and years, not a Republican in sight in the city of Atlanta. So you can't blame Republicans. This is a city of Atlanta run by Democrats for years and years and years, who also last year jumped on board with blaming the police, wanted to reallocate money away from the police, drove police away, drove police into retirement, because the mayor of this city of Atlanta is, I'm not even going to talk about her other than the fact that she's just pretty bad, awful, blamed the police for everything, didn't have the police's back. So now where are we now? This past last week, the weekend before last, 24 shootings in Atlanta. I'm talking about Metro Atlanta. 24 people were shot, 6 were killed. And let me give you a hint. These shooters weren't white supremacists. These weren't some white group or light-skinned group. Most of this are black-on-black crime or gang violence or brown-on-brown Hispanic gang violence. That's 24 people shot, 6 killed. Folks, that's Atlanta. Now, let's go to New York City. New York City, where the worst governor in the country resides, by 2 o'clock on Sunday. So we're talking Saturday and Sunday by 2 o'clock. I don't even have the numbers after 2 o'clock, folks, because I didn't even want to see them. But by 2 o'clock on Sunday, New York City, 29 people had been shot. 29 people had been shot, and we know one, at least to this day, that I got the story, one died, and that one person was a teenager. So 29 people shot, teenager dead, all by 2 o'clock on Sunday afternoon in New York City. This is a crime wave, folks. But not to be beaten, not to be taken off their perch. Let's talk about Chicago, where the worst mayor in the country resides. She may be the worst mayor in history. I don't know. But she deserves to be behind bars. At the very least, you people in Chicago have got to vote this lady out of office. But not to be, beaten, Chicago once again leads the way. And I'm talking this past weekend, just this past weekend, 55 people shot. 55 people shot this past weekend. 12 dead, including a 15-year-old boy who was shot on his front porch in his head. That's Chicago, folks. This is the United States of America. And the city of Chicago, who, again, also like New York and like Atlanta, run by 100% Democrats, not one Republican in sight, not an independent in sight, not a libertarian in sight. 100% Democrat control for the past decades and decades. And this is what you're seeing when you defund and blame the police for everything. When you make the exception the rule instead of the rule the rule. So what I mean by that is, are there some bad apples that are police? Sure. Is it the rule? No, it's the exception. But what the Democrats are doing are making the exception the rule because they think it's going to get them more power. And that's pretty darn sad, folks. Pretty darn sad. But imagine coming out of your front porch and finding your 15-year-old son shot dead in the head. Because that happened this weekend in Chicago. 55 people shot. 12 dead. Over a weekend. We're talking Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, folks, that's a crime wave in Democrat-run cities. So when you email me, and look, I love all you listeners. I don't care who you vote for. I love that you listen to my show, and I thank you for it. But when you email me and you ask me how I can be so hard on Democrats, this is why I can be hard on Democrats. Because this is information that you don't hear on CNN or MSNBC or ABC or CBS or NBC or PBS or NPR. You're not going to hear it on Entertainment Tonight. You're not going to hear it on late night TV. Jimmy Fallon isn't going to come on tonight and tell you about the 55 people shot, mostly black on black crime in Chicago. He's not going to talk to you about the 15-year-old boy who was shot in the head. He was a black boy. Not going to talk to you about that. Why? Because apparently those black lives don't matter. Have you heard BLM? Is BLM doing one march in Chicago? Are they out there holding up any sign with this 15-year-old boy's name on it? You know the answer to that. No. Because the Marxist group that is BLM could care less about all lives, could care less about all black lives. They only care about the black lives that's going to gain them more power. Because the founder of Black Lives, why, by golly, she's got $1 million homes to buy, folks. She's only got 3 of them, and she needs some more. So she's got to fool you into sending her more money. The more money you send that BLM Marxist organization, the more elitist those founders become. While you live in the city running for your life. All right, folks, we'll be right back. We're taking a break.
If you live to serve and want to make an even bigger difference, consider joining the U.S. Army. With training in fields like medical care, linguistics, and engineering, an Army career can amplify your efforts with humanitarian opportunities all over the world. Plus, you'll receive competitive pay and incredible benefits, so you'll be taken care of, too. Learn more at GoArmy.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, join me, Roger B., every Tuesday at 1400 hours right here on America's Web Radio for the Locked and Loaded Show. We will talk about guns, weapons, ammo, gun accessories, prepping, and so much more. So be sure to join us every Tuesday at 1400 or 2 p.m. for Locked and Loaded on America's Web Radio.
My name is Kyle Hayes, a motorsports student at Alfred State College. Every year, Alfred State students compete in the Great Race, which is a cross-country time endurance rally for vintage vehicles. As you can imagine, it's pretty costly. I'm asking for your help. Your donation can make it possible for these students to live their passion and promote the vintage automobile industry. Please visit our site at give.alfredstate.edu and search Great Race to learn more and help us reach our goal. Thank you.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we are back, folks. I am Victor Armendariz. This is On Point with Victor. You listeners are awesome. So I had a listener chime in, and she pointed out or wants to know what were the figures before the defunding of the police happened. So you know what? Bad host. I should have had those numbers. So I'm going to get those numbers, and I'll do a report on that for next show to see where we've come from. So let's say 2019. Might go back before then, because this all started after the George Floyd incident, and when George Floyd was killed, then the Democrats, of course, seized on an opportunity. I'm not even going to get into all of that, but we'll have to go back a little bit and see when they started this defunding of the police, and then let's compare, because folks, in some areas, crime is up over 200%. I know that. I also got a message from a listener in New York just now, and this listener in New York pointed out that the sun doesn't rise in the east, the border is closed, and what was the other? Biden is a moderate, and how which one of those is true? Folks, they're not all true. Let's put it to you that way. Again, you listeners are great, and I love the interaction. So keep your comments coming. It's just great. But I will do that. So caller that's in, I believe, Brookhaven, Georgia. I'm going to find out some numbers, but I do know that in some areas like New York City, we're talking 100 to 200%. That's how much crime is up. Now, Chicago, they've led the way for a while, so they might only be up 20, 30, 40, 50%. But they lead the way, and they lead the way by a lot. They may rival the D.C. proper area. D.C. is, you don't want to be out at night there either in certain areas. So pretty crazy, folks. But I want you to think about this. When I pointed out the shootings in Atlanta, I point out the shootings in New York, I point out the shootings in Chicago. The majority of these shootings are black-on-black crime. They're black-on-black shootings. These are black victims. A 15-year-old boy on his front porch shot in the head. A black boy. Do you know his name? Is BLM out there telling you his name? Is the media telling you his name? No. Is any late-night person talking about this 15-year-old boy shot in the head? No. So ask yourself why. You Democrat sycophants out there, you really need to ask yourself why. And folks, I'm not angry. I'm just right. But you've got to ask yourself the logical question. Why is there not an uproar over these black victims? Well, I'll tell you why. It doesn't... A Marxist organization like BLM, they want power. They want power over you. And they're not going to do it by pointing out black victims if their perpetrator was a black assailant. They're just not going to point this out to you because it doesn't help their narrative. You can't force people to wear masks because of shootings. So it doesn't fit the narrative. It's a shame, folks. It's a shame, but it's a very logical question. And everybody out there should be asking, why aren't you hearing about these black victims? Why aren't you hearing about the Hispanic victims who are victims of Hispanic gang members? Folks, I didn't even talk about the numbers in L.A. Of the gang violence going on there, or New Orleans, or Detroit, or D.C. I didn't even have to mention those. San Francisco, Austin, Texas. Austin, Texas is a liberal mecca. And this bozo of a mayor they've got was on the other night and couldn't even answer a question on why they have such a homeless problem, why there are people defecating in front of businesses. It's a mess, folks. Where Democrats get full control, you see chaos and crime and drug problems and overdoses. And folks, it's all there for you to see. You just got to have the courage to see it, to face it, and to want to ask the questions. And if you ask a question and somebody calls you a racist, well, then you won that argument. And you know that whatever question you asked is instantly validated if somebody's reaction to your question is to call you a racist. Folks, trust me, I know. I get called a brown racist. I get called racist on social media, and then somebody will say, you realize he's Hispanic. You know he's Mexican descent, Spanish descent. And then they just come back with, oh, well, he must be a brown racist. It's unbelievable, folks, but this is what we're dealing with. And I, you know what, folks? I opened the show by saying there's optimism, because there is. There is. You're still an American. You still live in the greatest country on the planet. And we still have the ballot box. And I know there have been issues, but you still have time to go talk to your neighbor. You have time to talk to your family. You have time to bring this logic out to all your friends and your family and coworkers outside the workplace. Don't do it in the workplace. But you have time. And I'll tell you, folks, right now, the American people are starting to see what's going on. There are people who voted for Biden, or they sat on the sidelines and didn't vote at all in 2020. They're seeing what's going on. And they're coming over to the Republican Party right now. And let's hope that the Freedom Caucus can lead the day with the Republicans and not the GOP establishment. But there are people moving. There are black people. There are Hispanic people, Asian. There are all kinds of minorities moving over to the Republican Party. And there are Democrats coming back over, Reagan Democrats coming back over, because they care about their safety. They care about the border. They care about gas prices. They care about food prices. They care about Israel, our only ally in the Middle East, our true only ally, and the true only democracy, if you want to call it that, country of freedom in the Middle East. You know, people are seeing what's going on. They really are. And I think that pendulum is going to swing way back in 2022. And I do believe that the Democrats are going to lose power. And I think they know that. The ones, these analysts up there in D.C., they probably see what's coming. But anyway, folks, okay, I want to move on a little bit. You guys know John Cena. I think the guy, I think these guys who are making the jump from wrestling to actors, to being actors, few of them can do it with the success that The Rock has had. The Rock, that dude is such a better actor than wrestler. I don't even know if he does the wrestling thing anymore, but he is such a good actor. I just absolutely love his movies. I don't care where he stands politically, although I know mostly it seems that he leans to the conservative viewpoint until his communist Hollywood masters make him, take up for China. But The Rock does a great job. I go to the movies not to be told what political thoughts to have. I go to the movies to be entertained, and The Rock does a killer job. But John Cena is another guy who I think is doing a pretty good job in the acting world. I like watching his movies. I think he's good. Let me tell you, this big tough guy that came from the wrestling world, that is John Cena, just had to grovel to the communist Chinese government. I mean, I would give anything to run into John Cena on the street somewhere and really just look at him. And all 5'3" of me, I will stand on a ladder just so I can be eye to eye with John Cena. And I want to ask him if he realizes what he is doing. Because you know what his crime was? The other day, John Cena referred to Taiwan as a country. He referred to the country Taiwan as being a country. Well, the Chinese Communist government do not like a free Taiwan. The Chinese Communist government want to rule Taiwan. And so when a Hollywood actor that has the prominence that John Cena has, and he's got a new movie coming out, well, the Hollywood bozo Democrats that run Hollywood, these leftist douchebags in Hollywood, they need that movie to be a success in China. You see, China's got 1 billion, billions of people over there. Well, that's dollars for Hollywood. Communists be damned. Child slavery be damned. Concentration camps? What? Who cares? They're paying money to Hollywood. So the Hollywood hierarchy forced John Cena, or convinced him, to go on social media and apologize to China. He even did it in Chinese, folks. Look it up. It's crazy. It's crazy. But this big, tough American guy is on social media groveling to the communist Chinese government because the Hollywood masters, who are mastered by the Chinese communist masters, told him he had to apologize. How dare you call Taiwan a country? Folks, what else is Taiwan? But that's the kind of stuff that's happening today. That's how much control China has. Now, for all you sycophants out there who for 4 years were telling people that President Trump was a Russian agent, that President Trump was a pawn of the Russians, what do you think Biden and the Democrats are? Trump, of the many things that he is, he was never a pawn to any foreign government. Never. But yet Biden is owned by the Chinese, folks. Russia is laughing all the way to the bank. Do you know those oh my gosh, it's going to escape me, but during the Trump administration, Trump put a lot of restrictions on Russia. Trump put actions against Russia. He put, and I'm going to think of the word, maybe David can think of it, but the word I'm looking for, something they put restrictions on Russia. And sanctions. Thank you, Dave. That's why David is legendary Dave. Sanctions. So the Trump administration put more sanctions on Russia than the Obama administration, than the Clinton administration, than the Bushies. And you know what Biden did a couple of weeks ago in the code of silence? You know what Biden did under the cover of the media? He removed the sanctions off of Russia. Yeah. Who's the Russian pawn? And you think Biden's going to do anything to challenge China when China has made his son rich? And well, they've made the whole Biden family rich. I won't even really get into a lot of that, folks, but that, again, you need to open your eyes and just see what's right in front of you. It's all right in front of you. But poor John Cena, big American tough guy, has to go grovel to the Chinese for forgiveness because he called Taiwan a country. He recognized Taiwan's freedom as a country. And now he's groveling to the Chinese. It's sad, folks. Folks, you know, you guys who know me, you know I'm all of 5'3" if I'm wearing the right shoes. And I'll be doggone. That's a Southern phrase, I think. But you will never see me grovel to the communist country of China. Never. I mean, folks, this is just ridiculous. It really is sad. But, you know, while I'm on the China thing, let me remind you what the Chinese Communist government does. They kill people who speak out against the communist government. They have ongoing concentration camps. Yes, those kind of concentration camps. They're full of Muslims. I mean, they persecute Muslims, folks. They persecute Christians. They basically will persecute you if you believe there's a religion other than the communist government religion. You see, in China, communist governance is the religion. If you try and put your religion on top of that, you might find yourself in a concentration camp or just dead, especially if you speak out against the China regime. China continues to use slave labor. They use children's slave labor. Yes, this is all things that the communist China government does. You know, China, this communist country that weaponized a virus known as COVID-19, Corona. Oh, yes, folks. You know, I heard from people a year ago when I said, look at this evidence. There's evidence showing. I didn't say definitively. I just said there was evidence showing that this virus came from a lab in Wuhan. And we had every right to call it the Wuhan virus. And there was evidence mounting up showing that the virus came from a lab in Wuhan. But you guys, many of you emailed me and said, oh, Victor, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, I'm going to give you some new facts when we come back. Don't go anywhere. This is On Point with Victor.
In 2009, the membership organization Docs for Patient Care was founded. People all around the country wanted to participate in the efforts of this group, and they wanted to join, but they were unable to do so unless they were physicians. It's for this reason that the Docs for Patient Care Foundation was created. Now, everyone can join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients, dedicated to fighting for your healthcare freedom and preserving the doctor-patient relationship. While you're at your computer, please go to www.docs4patientcarefoundation.org. That's www.docs4patientcarefoundation.org and make a tax-deductible donation and join the fight along with us. Thank you.
If you live to serve and want to make an even bigger difference, consider joining the U.S. Army. With training in fields like medical care, linguistics, and engineering, an Army career can amplify your efforts with humanitarian opportunities all over the world. Plus, you'll receive competitive pay and incredible benefits, so you'll be taken care of, too. Learn more at GoArmy.com.
This is America's Web Radio. Would you like to have a show, talk about your business, or express your opinion on America's Web Radio? Just email gm@americaswebradio.com and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Hey, we're back. Folks, I'm going to deviate for a second because I just had a couple of really good messages come across from listeners across the country, or out there in the country. One listener, folks, from Pennsylvania, I talked about how we're still in the greatest country and we still have the ballot box, but there are problems. Well, I've got firsthand knowledge now from a listener in Pennsylvania who was they had primaries last week and they ran out of Republican ballots. Now, folks, maybe this was an accident, but I doubt it. Imagine if they ran out of Democrat ballots. Imagine. That would have been every news story, top of the list. Every news story. It would have been breaking news. Wolf Blitzer would have tripped over himself to get in front of the camera to say, breaking news, Democrat ballots are being withheld or Democrat ballots are being lost. That would have been the story, wall to wall to wall. But did you hear about this that happened in Pennsylvania last week in the primary? They ran out of Republican ballots, so voters had to wait for hours for them to find and get some Republican ballots. So, folks, we must be vigilant. Look, being American is not easy. Freedom and liberty is not easy. You've got to work for it. So we've got to be vigilant. We've got to be vigilant. And this is what I'm talking about. Get involved, ladies and gentlemen. Get off the couch. Get involved. Like this caller from Pennsylvania who was there working, I believe, as a poll worker. Get involved, folks. Go in your community. You get involved as a poll watcher or some kind of involvement so you can make sure that this doesn't happen. And when it does happen, that it gets fixed. And I believe that all those people were able to get a Republican ballot. So let's hope that's the case. I'll have to get an update from that listener. But folks, this stuff is going on out there. The Democrats do not want to let go of power. They have gotten a taste of power that they never should have had. And that's because so many of you gave them so much power because of a virus. Now, folks, I am not belittling the virus. I know the virus really was hard on elderly, and if you had comorbidities, it was hard. But, folks, there is no virus clause or pandemic clause in the United States Constitution. You do not give career politicians, many of which are not doctors, you do not give them the power to end your way of life because of a virus, folks. Again, I'm not angry. I'm just right. So, but thank you, listener in Pennsylvania. And I also got a listener from Florida who brought up a great point. Folks, Biden is going out of his way, doing everything he can with the Democrats to shut down pipelines in the United States. So while we're shutting down pipelines, what did Biden do? You know, I talked about in the last segment about Biden getting rid of all the sanctions that Trump put on Russia. And then Biden came along and removed those by the cover of the media because they're not going to tell you about it. So Biden's moved the sanctions off of Russia. Well, you know what Biden signed off on? Russia's pipeline. He gave the blessing for Russia to continue their pipeline and to expand their pipeline, to build a pipeline right into these other countries where they can be their source of energy. But here we are in the United States, and he's shutting down pipelines. How does that make sense, folks? If you're a sycophant Democrat, or if you're in the Biden administration, and I know some of you hear me, And you're out there telling the American people, we've got to do it for the climate. We've got to shut down the pipeline to save the planet. We've got to shut down our pipeline and cause pain and put people out of work. High-paying jobs, we're putting people out of work. Because we've got to do it for the earth. We've got to do it for the climate. We've got to do it for the children. But then you turn around and you okay and remove any kind of restrictions so Russia can continue to build and expand their pipeline? You know, Russia's already dirty. China is filthy. What are we doing about demanding them to help the planet? Isn't it funny, folks, how we don't demand anything from China, but they demand stuff from us all the time? We don't demand anything from Russia, but they demand stuff from us all the time. And the Democrats will line up and demand that you, the American citizen, bear the burdens of everything demand that the communist regime of China makes, or the demands from Russia. The Democrats line up, folks, and they want you, the American citizen, to bear the burdens. But then they turn around and they don't give a rat's you-know-what China's doing and what Russia's doing. Whether they're doing it to the planet, whether they're doing it to Muslims, whether they're doing it to gay people, whether they're doing it to just regular citizens, they don't care what they're doing. Children in slave labor? Pfft, no problem. We got a $1,000 iPhone. Without children labor, you'd pay $5,000 for that iPhone. Or your Galaxy. Or whatever bit of technology other you have. You see, folks, I am telling you, this is not a matter of Democrat Republicans. This is a matter of policy. And this is a matter of right now, you've got a group of politicians known as Democrats who could care less about the American citizen. All they care about is the non-citizen and playing footsies with the communist government regime of China, who puts people in concentration camps, has children slave labor, adult slave labor, and kills dissidents. I mean, folks, at some point you're going to have to choose a side. It's going to be freedom and liberty in the United States, and you're going to have to stop voting for Democrats, or you're going to be on the side of child labor and adult labor and concentration camps. And, while I'm at it, there's a gay group, I don't know, some LGBTQRSTUYZ group that put their whatever weight they have behind Hamas, a terrorist group, a radical Islamic group. Folks, do you realize how ridiculous it is? I mean, how stupid are these, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it, but how stupid are these members of this LGBTQYQRSZTXYZ? How stupid are these members to get behind Hamas, a radical Islamic group? Folks, there are more than one Islamic country in the Middle East that throws gay people off the buildings. Their crime is being gay. Why don't you go over to a Middle Eastern Islamic country and have a gay parade? Let's see how far you get. Your parade is going to be right up the stairs to the top of a building and off the building to your death. That is what these radical Islamic countries do to gay people. But yet you've got a gay group here in the United States that's getting behind the group that throws gay people off buildings. You know where in the Middle East, the one place you can have a gay parade and you can be openly gay? That's Israel, folks, the country of Israel. That is the only country in the Middle East that you can be openly gay and have an actual gay parade should you want one. You want to have a pride parade? You can do it in Israel. You're not going to do it outside of Israel, lest you be thrown off a building. Folks, these are facts. You can look them up. Do DuckDuckGo searches. Open up DuckDuckGo and start doing some searches. And you're going to see. You can validate everything that I've told you. All right, so thank you to those great listeners. Thank you, listeners in Pennsylvania. Thank you, listeners in Florida. You guys are awesome, awesome, awesome. So, in fact, one of those listeners, I'm just going to say this because I got to thank them. One of those listeners, the ones in Florida, they're awesome. They're current patrons for my show, and I can't thank you enough. So, thanks, guys. So, all right. let me get back to a little bit more about China and this COVID virus, because now the national media, who called me a conspiracy theorist, and many of you they called you wackos, because a year ago we were not just me, many colleagues, many people in the radio and talk radio were pointing out that so much evidence was pointing towards the Wuhan virus, the COVID-19, that it came from a lab, and that lab came from a weapons lab in Wuhan, China. And now, after a year of being told we were kook theorists, or we were conspiracy theorists, or we were wacko, or we were racist, don't forget, you were racist too. If you followed the evidence, you were racist. Well, now the media is quietly coming out with stories saying, you know what? Gosh, look at that. The virus came from a lab in Wuhan, not from a wet market. There was no, the penguin or bat from a wet market. No, folks. It came from a lab in Wuhan. And now the media is starting to run stories going, just maybe. They're showing now that if you had to follow the evidence, like many of us were doing back a year ago, that all the evidence was pointing to this came out of a lab. And now we know, I think it was a Wall Street Journal or New York Times reported that the patient zero, folks, whenever there's a viral outbreak, there's always a patient zero. Have you not seen every zombie movie? There's always a patient zero. Well, that part of Hollywood movies is true. And there was a patient zero for COVID-19. And now we know that patient zero, along with some other patients, came from the lab in Wuhan. So the first known cases of this virus came from that lab in Wuhan. That's where the evidence is pointing to. So not from a wetlands, not from a wet farm, not from a wet farmer's market, not from all the stories the Democrats have been telling you, not from a bat, not from a penguin. No, it came from the lab. And why? Because they were altering the viruses. It's a lab. Now, hey, maybe they're doing some good work. I'm not gonna disparage the work they're doing. Maybe they're doing good work over there. But it's communist China, and you can't believe them. Whatever they're telling you, you're not getting the full truth. And now we know this. We know this now, folks. So whatever they were doing with that virus, COVID-19, whatever they were trying to do, whatever they were trying to gain from manipulating that virus, it infected a lab worker, and she became patient zero. And then the 2, 3, 4 other patients came from that lab in Wuhan. And ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to wake up and hold Tony Fauci? Are you ready to hold him accountable for lying to you, the American people, for over a year? This man has been lying to us. Now, Democrat politicians lie all the time. But Dr. Tony Fauci, a respected virologist, this man has been given so much power over the past year, so much power over the way you and I live, and yet he lied to us for a year. Fauci knew where this virus came from. Fauci knew, and you know how we know? Because, folks, there's a report coming out, and you're going to see this, a report coming out that Taiwan, the government of Taiwan, had intelligence about this lab and how the virus was getting out and how it infected patient zero. And they contacted Fauci's office. Now, this is going to be corroborated, folks. So pay attention to what's coming out in the news. And they contacted Fauci's office. Fauci knew. He knew a year ago, folks. He knew a year ago where this came from. And they also knew shortly after it broke out that the virus wasn't going to be caught off surfaces. Very small chance. So, folks, we're at the end of the show, so I'll get into more of this next week. But thanks so much for listening, folks. Stay tuned for Locked and Loaded with Roger B. He is coming up next. You guys have a good week.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, join me, Roger B., every Tuesday at 1400 hours right here on America's Web Radio.